Hi, everyone. This is Steve Dellasan, and thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of CEOs You Should Know. I am thrilled and excited to be joined by Dr. Rainey, who is the CEO of Brooklyn.org.
Hi, thank
Doc-
you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming in. So, why don't we kick off today and jump in a little bit about yourself? I'd love to hear for all of our listeners to know a little bit about your background and really what led you to your current work.
Yeah, I think that, what led me to my current work is that I've always been really committed to racial justice, even before that was a thing, right? Like the idea of how do we help people to be able to access
Hmm.
opportunities in a real way. So, I started out in the nonprofit sector and worked my way up there. And I was there for many years when it kind of hit me that I really would love to explore the for profit sector. And I went into the for profit sector as an HR professional. And I did HR for several Fortune 500 organizations and realized that a lot of the work that I was doing was really around how do I create spaces for people of color to feel comfortable at work. Again, DEI before
Hmm.
there was DEI,
Yep.
and really trying to help companies to come up with strategies and programs that would help people to feel more belonging in their organizations. Eventually, after several years doing that, I kind of missed the mission driven
Sure.
aspect of work and moved to Brooklyn Navy Yard, where I started in workforce development using my HR expertise to connect people who were disconnected from the labor market back into the labor market. And at that, when I was working there, I really realized how important it was to be able to connect my personal and my professional passions together because I was in Brooklyn. I
Hmm.
love Brooklyn. And I was able to do what I thought was really important was like, how do I help to close this enormous wealth gap, right? And help people to connect more to opportunities. And I had an amazing time there. I was there for 8 years. I left there as the chief administrative officer, overseeing quite a bit of the work.
Sure.
I worked with two amazing CEOs who I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be a CEO someplace where I can drive the mission and do work that I'm passionate about personally and also doing it professionally as well. So, with the help of my last CEO, I decided that I wanted to move into a role that was focused on racial justice and being the CEO or the head of that organization to really be able to drive that mission. And from there, I went to an organization called GOSO, Getting Out and Staying Out, for serving young men who were formerly incarcerated. It was in Harlem. I was there for 2 years. I kind of always knew I wanted to do this work in Brooklyn,
Sure.
but I wasn't looking yet.
Yep.
But this came along. The CEO of Brooklyn.org, which was then Brooklyn Community Foundation, an organization, a philanthropy, a foundation that is focused on racial justice, serving nonprofits in my amazing borough of Brooklyn.
That's
So
awesome.
that's how I ended up in this
All the
role.
stars aligned.
Yeah, it really did. It
That's
really did.
incredible. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So obviously, very impressive background, both in the nonprofit space as well as the private sector,
Hmm.
right? How have you seen the industry and the communities evolve over time, and how has that really evolved your perspective on the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think that what I've seen is that, right now we're in a moment of deep, deep need. And, people all over are struggling, right?
Sure.
Even those who feel like, what, I have a little bit more resources than other people.
Hmm.
I think that, we've kind of seen that kind of turn of our city kind of becoming unaffordable, not for
Yeah.
everyone. And I think that what's driven me is that I realize that if everyone has a seat at the table, if everyone has the services they need, and that goes for the folks that work for me as well as the community that we serve, that we're all going to have a better experience. Like I'm feeling the crunch of going into the supermarket and something that cost $5, like a piece of salmon costing $10. I'm
Yeah.
making choices about things that I didn't make choices about, right? Whether or not I go out to eat twice a week or 3 times a week.
Totally.
And I think that over my entire career, what has always driven me is like the human experience,
Sure.
right? And what can I do in my small space to help to improve that experience? And that has been both in the nonprofit and the for-profit sector because I've always worked in roles where there were line employees
Hmm.
that I wanted to make sure had as great an experience in the organization or the company as I'm having in the organization or the company.
I love that. That's a great perspective to have. So let's dive in a little bit about Brooklyn Org. I know you have a new strategic plan in place to be able to really help with the evolution of the organization. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about that vision and what are some of the specific goals you have ahead?
Yeah. Brooklyn Org is a foundation. It's a philanthropy. And I really like to say that up front because we're really trying to, with our new strategic plan, but also with our rebrand, is really trying to show how philanthropy can be done differently,
Hmm.
how philanthropy can really listen to the people on the ground, the folks that are impacted, the folks that are actually doing the work, and the folks that are interested in improving the lives of others who are
Sure.
our donors as well. So our rebrand and our strategic plan has really been about creating a movement where
Sure.
everyone comes to the table at every level. So, what we're looking at is how can we're already doing a good job at participatory grant making
Hmm.
where, the folks who are the most impacted are making the decisions on where funding goes, right?
That's
Like,
great.
I can't make those decisions. I need people who actually have experienced it to say, this is what's important. And we also do that with our donors. Our donors can help us make decisions on where funding goes. But I think that what we're really evolving to, and we're already doing that work, is that, we want everyone to feel like they can be philanthropic.
Hmm.
I feel like philanthropy, long before I got into a foundation, has always been important to me. And of course, as a nonprofit leader, I've never been able to be, one of the high wealth donors, right? But I've been able to give my time
Yep.
and some of my treasure
Yeah.
to the things that I care about. And we're really working towards making sure that everyone feels like I can support my neighbors,
Yep.
whether that be a membership that's a year long at $100 a year, or whether that be being on one of our participatory grant making
Yep.
programs, whether that be volunteering, or whether that be actually donating, right?
Yeah.
Like, and supporting the work that we do every day. We want everyone to feel like they can help their neighbors, they can be part of this movement, and that there's no barriers to that, or there's no stigmas if you're
For
not
sure.
able to participate as a very wealthy individual. And we've seen a lot of success with that, and we just want to do more of that.
I love that. Yeah, because I think a lot of people think of philanthropy as writing a
It's
six-figure
for
check,
rich
right?
folks.
And not
Exactly.
everybody participates. So it kind of goes back to that motto and that mindset you have of bringing everybody to the table and taking that message into the philanthropic
And it
space.
takes away from, being able to be visionary, right?
Yeah.
Because someone who is like not able to give at a high level might have more perspective on what people are actually dealing with every day, right?
Sure.
So we want to include those voices so they can say, hey, this is what actually, like, we have principles, this is what actually happens in the school, or you know what, hey, this is really what people who are dealing with drug misuse need.
Hmm.
And so we want everyone to feel like they can be part of that and like their voices matter. And I will say that even our high wealth donors, they feel the same way. They're really excited to hear from community members
Yeah.
about where their wealth should go.
100%. And it probably gives them that reassurance that it's being used the right way for the right people.
Exactly, exactly.
That's awesome. So obviously, you talked about visionary and helping really evolve Brooklyn Org, right? I'm sure that along the way there might have been some challenges or some obstacles you've had to overcome in the new position. Can you share with us what some of those challenges were and how you were able to come or how you plan to overcome them?
Yeah, I think, I started this role kind of in the midst of COVID. COVID was still, everyone was still working from home, and really trying to figure out how do we make sure that we're here for the community
Sure.
while we're still taking care of the people who are doing the work within our
Hmm.
organization, and that they feel safe and ready to come back and kind of serve. I will say that was really difficult. I will also say that, there are people sign up for a certain leader, right?
Yep.
When you get a job, you're like, oh, I really like that person and I believe in their vision.
You have to.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so I'm coming in new. There's people who didn't sign up for my leadership, right? They were like, yeah, I get it, but that's not exactly what I signed up
Yeah.
for. So I think that was part of it. What I will say is, and other challenges around like understanding, a foundation is a very sophisticated and complicated financial model.
Sure.
So really having to
Mhm.
take a lot of time away from, the thing that's really important, which is fundraising and relationship building, to really understand the day-to-day operations.
Yep.
What I will say that, how I overcame it is that, one is that I have an amazing board. And, that board really felt like they hired the person that they believed in.
Love
So,
that.
they'll pull my skirt tail and tell me, what, you're not doing everything perfectly, but they're also like, we believe in you.
Hmm.
And that believing in me has allowed me to really be able to move at a much better pace than, being questioned every moment. I feel like we're a real team.
Yep.
And, having a board that also walks the walk and cares deeply about Brooklyn and cares deeply about their neighbors has been really helpful. The other thing that I've been doing this is year 3,
Sure.
has been I built an amazing team. Like the team that we have who is supporting Brooklyn Org is a passionate team. They get it. They care about Brooklyn. They're also exceptional at their work in regards to the product that
Hmm.
we create and we put out as well. So I have a team of people that I have really purposely interviewed and chosen who are actually so much smarter than me at the things that they're responsible for. And also spend a lot of time with them, and they believe in the vision
That's awesome.
and the mission, and they believe in my leadership, which I am just very, very grateful for.
That's awesome. It's two important things to have, right? That aligned vision, that aligned mission that you're fighting for, but also a team around you that's going to support you because
Yeah,
no one could do everything by themselves.
no
So
one
it's
can do
important
everything.
to have that community of support.
Exactly. There were things at my last role that I felt like, why can I get that done?
Yep.
And I'm getting it done here.
It's
And I
awesome.
honestly believe, or I know that it's because of the team that they have extraordinary skills and extraordinary passion for the work.
Awesome. You mentioned this earlier, but before joining Brooklyn Org, you led Getting Out and Staying Out, and you focused on the workplace development and job placement for justice involved youth. Tell us a little bit about your time there and how you carry what you learned there into your current leadership role.
I love that. So my time there was amazing. I think as a Black woman who was pretty much raised in Brooklyn with, 2 sons who are adults and a husband, and, knowing that experience as a Black male in New York City, I think that I thought I knew more than I know. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the things that I learned very early on is like, as a leader, you have to be open to knowing what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what I discovered is that I don't know the experience of these young people. I thought that, I was going to come in and I'm going to tell everyone how wonderful they are and they're going to just get jobs. But there was so much more for me to learn from the team in regards to the trauma that they've experienced, the supports that they need. And so I think that it gave me an insight and a voice as an advocate in a way that I never had before that has really helped me in this role, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like really being able to talk about like the struggles of the participants themselves that are in some of these programming and why it's important to support programs and to think about outcomes differently. I think the other thing is that even though I had worked at the Navy Yard and I was pretty highly positioned, the Navy Yard didn't do as much fundraising
Sure.
because we are an industrial park, and so there was a collection of rents,
Yeah.
right? So with that, what I learned from GOSO is that being a fundraiser and being a CEO is a really is not an easy job, and that there are a lot of obstacles to funding from the city that you have to think about, which I didn't know before. So now I think that what I have is like a clear perspective of what the nonprofits that we actually fund are going through.
Sure.
And I'm able to be a bridge between them and donors to talk about like, it seems like they're a $3 million nonprofit, but you're not realizing that they're waiting for $1 million, right?
Yep.
Or you don't realize what it really takes to run that organization. Now I do. I did not know that before I was a CEO. I had no idea of the barriers and obstacles that CEOs went through every single day. And lastly, I feel like what I always tell this story that, I think I did everything at Go So Right, that I think that my heart was in the right place. The work that I was doing, I was really proud of. But again, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And I think that I also brought with me a better understanding of the relationship between a CEO and their board. And I think that that's part of the reason why my relationship with my board. I mean, they're a sophisticated, amazing board, but I also think that I have approached it differently, and I understand that I'm not just a worker bee.
Hmm.
I'm also a convener, and someone has to make sure that everyone is aware of our programming, our strategies, and so yeah, I learned a lot in that role.
That's awesome. Those are great learnings. So valuable information that you're able to take into your next step of your journey.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations are in order. I know you were recognized as one of the Network Journal's 25 influential Black women in business. So
Thank
congratulations.
you.
What does it mean to you to receive this kind of recognition, and how do you use your platform to inspire others?
Yeah, I love the idea because I think that part of my role um, in life is inspiring others, but also developing others as well, and
Hmm.
making sure that, like, if I'm as a woman, as a Black woman, if I'm not, bringing people along, or if I'm not lifting them up or elevating them, then I'm doing a disservice,
Sure.
right? Because I'm better if you're better.
Yep.
So I think of these awards in that way, right? Like, it's an opportunity to elevate me and my work. And I always tell my team and folks, I think that the most important thing is that I'm elevating the work before I elevate myself, so that
Hmm.
when you talk about the work that I do, that it's real,
Yep.
right? But I also believe that those kinds of acknowledgments are really important to making making sure that I'm more credible, right? Like
Yep.
that, like it adds credibility
100%.
regardless of
Yeah.
how important it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important if I'm going to help to bring other people along, that I have credibility. So
100%.
it is it's an honor to be recognized in that way, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you're number 100 of this, but there are hundreds of people who are doing this work and doing it well. So I feel really honored and privileged to be recognized in those ways.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think you hit it spot on, right? That credibility for your team that you mentioned earlier,
Exactly.
credibility for the donors, credibility for the people that are volunteering. So congrats. That's
Thank
awesome
you.
to see.
Thank you.
I know one of the focus is of the organization is to end inequity in Brooklyn, right? What do you believe is the most pressing challenge right now in the borough, and how do you guys plan to solve that?
Yeah. I think that affordability is definitely, to me, the most pressing challenge, right? I think that that kind of is the starting point of all the other issues.
For
I think
sure.
that housing insecurity is huge, and mental health issues.
Hmm.
I see things now in my community, in the community where I am, downtown Brooklyn,
Yep.
working. I see on the subways so many manifestations of this issue around affordability, right?
Sure.
Because what's happening is that if people can't afford to take care of themselves, and then to be caretakers for their family when they're dealing with things like mental health, if they're returning citizens from the carceral system, these are the things that lead to people doing things that may not we may think of as like, oh, I get on the bus, and so many people get on without paying, right? But honestly, they probably can't afford to pay.
Yeah.
So I think that affordability for housing, groceries, day to day needs is something that is really kind of the catalyst to so many other
For sure.
issues that are happening in Brooklyn, like not caring about if your street is clean. The way that I think about this, and what we're doing, is we're really trying to share with our stakeholders, our networks, our donors, like how nonprofits are filling these gaps and how important they are to making sure that people are thriving and
Hmm.
that they're able to participate in the American dream in a more meaningful way, and why it's important for them to participate in the American dream. So we have nonprofits that we support that are doing things like what Gosal's
Hmm.
doing in Brooklyn, right? Like
That's
making
great.
sure that people returning home have the skills that they need. They're actually building relationships with employers to make sure that they get jobs,
Sure.
right? We have organizations that we have one organization that I'm just so in love with, that is refurbishing computers from Fortune
Oh, that's
500
great.
companies and giving them to families, because they know that families who have a computer at home have better outcomes, right, academically
Yeah.
and with employment, right? Like, if you have to go to the library to apply for a job
Yep.
versus if you're able
Yeah.
to do it at home, there's
100%.
going to be a huge difference in
Yeah.
that. Organizations that are making sure that young people get new books, right? That they're starting to read. And all of these things to me, because I truly believe there's no racial justice without economic justice, right?
Sure.
Are going to help people to be able to thrive and also to be able to be successful. Educational organizations, cultural organizations, arts and culture organizations that are exposing young people to arts and culture in a real way. And so all of these things are going to help with the affordability piece because people are going to be connected to the workforce in a better way, right? And it's going to give them more opportunities going forward because we're not only keeping one demographic down by not serving them. What we're doing is we're losing talent.
Hmm.
So I think that that's how we think about it. We don't do that, but we want to encourage donors to fund us so we can fund them. And we just want to do more of that because nonprofits to me are going to be the way that we're going to make safer streets. This is how we're going to be safety. Policing is not going to do it. The nonprofits that we support are going to do it. So that's how we're trying to do the work.
That's awesome. Well, you guys are doing incredible work, so you should be
Thank
very,
you.
very proud of that.
Thank you.
So looking ahead, what is on the horizon? What is the future of Brooklyn Org, and what are you most excited about?
Yeah. Well, I'm most excited about we have so many new friends and supporters over the last 3 years since we rebranded. We've done a lot of work around building real relationship with
Sure.
Brooklynites. And I think that what's on the horizon is that one is that we are moving towards being a real model of philanthropy. And so maybe other community foundations will think about doing this work in a similar fashion. So I'm really excited about being able to take what we're doing for this almost 3 million people, like the most
Great.
people in the city, and kind of see how that kind of stretches out beyond Brooklyn to other communities as well, where people are feeling like if I support a community foundation, then I am actually supporting my neighbors and
Mhm.
finding a lot of different ways to do that. We have a huge volunteer day that we did last year for the first time across the whole borough. It's one day, a
That's
small
awesome.
commitment, but it's also a way for people to get introduced to the nonprofits, like
Sure.
intimately introduced, not
Hmm.
through us, but with them.
Yep.
So that doing that this year and
Do
kind
you
of
have the date for
we
2025?
do, but it is in April, and I don't have the exact date. I think it's in the 20s,
Okay.
but we do have a date for that already
That's
set.
exciting.
And families came out and they were and it's curated again. My amazing staff. It's amazing. It's curated so spectacularly and just like simply and structured, and it's like 2 hours of your time, and you're going to be learning a lot about a nonprofit, and you're actually going to get in there and do the work
Yeah.
as well. And I think the other thing is like, how do we're trying to expand again our the our supporters, right?
Hmm.
Like we don't want people to think like everyone doesn't have to give us, a huge amount, but
Sure.
how do we bring you in? And we're seeing that already happen, but it is on the horizon. Is to expand that even more and get more people involved in this movement to really support our neighbors.
That's great. That's awesome.
Thank
Awesome
you.
work. Excited to see the future and what's next. So, for anyone that's tuning in that maybe wants to jump into the nonprofit space or interested in a future career in that, what advice would you give them? What words of wisdom do you wish you knew right before you took that plunge?
I think one is like, you know what, just I think the most important thing is that you have to be passionate about something. Right?
Hmm.
Whenever I interview someone, it's like not just that you want to lead an organization, lead something or be involved in something that you're passionate about.
Yep.
Well, like whenever I interview someone, I ask them, what are you passionate about in non what keeps you up at night, right? Because
Yeah.
that's gonna motivate you to do this work across the board,
Yep.
right? And so you have to have something that you're passionate about and you have to care deeply. I think that the other thing is like, really think about how to dream about what you want the world to look like if you're thinking about nonprofit. And again, never be afraid to have to you always have to be open to learning. Like I feel like I'm always learning
Yeah.
and that I can learn from everyone. And if I think I have all the answers, then I'm not going to move. And I feel like it's okay to say I don't know, like, I don't know what that is. Tell me what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a younger leader, I would, if you said something I didn't understand, I would just sit there and pretend I knew it. Like, you're not going to learn that
Nope.
way. Like, if you want to
Gotta be
grow,
curious.
you
Yeah.
have. I was just telling my husband that. I'm like, be more curious. But yeah, you have to be curious.
Yeah.
Curiosity is really important
100%.
because there's just so much that we don't know.
That's amazing advice. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So we covered a lot. Very impressive background. Love the work that you guys are doing at Brooklyn Org. Is there anything that you feel like we might have missed before we wrap up?
No, I would just say the one thing is that Brooklyn Org, again, we believe that it's a model for philanthropy. We believe that it's a model for our entire nation, and we hope that people will think about getting involved if they care about communities. It's so much diversity and so many issue areas that our people in Brooklyn are impacted by. So if anyone is interested in getting involved, then I ask them to please check out. And even if you're not interested in getting involved, check out our website. I'm so proud of it. It's
Love
rebranded.
that.
It's amazing. Brooklyn.org. Brooklyn.org is Brooklyn.org, which is
Perfect.
amazing.
Easy
And
to remember.
yeah, and also if you follow us on IG, I just think that the information there is it's just stellar and it's fun. We do a lot of fun things in Brooklyn,
And what's
and
the
we
handle
want
on Instagram?
it is Brooklyn.org.
Perfect.
Yep, Brooklyn.org. Yep,
Easy
BK. Yep,
enough.
Brooklyn.org. Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Rainey, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and more importantly, for all the work that you're doing for the borough of Brooklyn and beyond.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Tune in next week for next week's edition of CEOs You Should Know.